Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the live stream. So today's discussion. So we are doing this special live stream with the aim of explaining our why do we support drug decriminalization and what logic do we have, what what is our reasoning behind it, and how drug criminalization and addressing drug addiction are two separate issues and how they need to be dealt with. And we'll cover how different countries tackle these issues and why libertarians support it. And then we'll cover the two recent articles that were done by Ajay sir on the Air India the Air India crash, and the second one being the Goa taxi issue. So firstly, let's start with the drug decriminalization, and specifically, let's start with the history of how this happened, how it has acted, and where are we now.
Yeah. Hi everyone. We actually made a post couple days ago about the Party or the Libertarian position is that we want decriminalization of drugs, and obviously that got pretty viral. We got a lot of comments, a lot of people agreeing, a lot of people disagreeing with it. So let's first talk about how this policy has actually come. In fact, a lot of people are saying you want to copy Western ideas and impose them on the country. I think that's absolutely wrong. India has a few thousand-year history of actually using marijuana and cannabis, and we it has actually been a traditional thing in many parts of the country. Even today, a lot of religious sadhus and all they actually use it, and even till 1985, it was absolutely legal. I mean, it was not a gray area or anything. It was absolutely legal in India. So the reason why India banned it is because of the US government. They started their war on drugs, and they basically got the UN to, sign a. They did a convention in the UN, I think around in 1961 or so, where they wanted to push these policies across to other countries to fight drugs, and eventually India was pressurized as well. So till 1985, it was absolutely fine. It was 100% legal. It was not some gray area. It was absolutely legal. You could buy it, you could sell it, you could smoke it, do whatever you want with it. And we didn't have any problem. It's not like Indian society absolutely collapsed. I mean, for thousands of years, our society has existed. We've been doing just fine. So to claim that, this is like in fact, the ban on marijuana actually is a Western idea. The whole NDPS Act was basically legislated by a Western sense of morality. But anyway, see, I don't want to really get into the discussion of East versus West, foreign versus domestic, because a good
Yeah,
idea
but
is a
it's
good idea.
yeah, but it's pretty relevant to that. That where does this ban come from?
Yeah, absolutely. This ban comes from the West. This is an American imposition on Indian culture and society where we didn't really object to it. So this is a Western imposition. That being said, now a good idea is a good idea. Where it comes from, bad idea is a bad idea. And our position is that this is actually a bad idea for more than one reason. Okay, so from the libertarian morality point of view, libertarians believe that you own your body and therefore you have the right to eat, drink, smoke, ingest whatever substances that you want. So by telling somebody that they can't smoke or eat or however they prefer to deliver any drug into their body is basically a violation of their individual rights. So that is a very core from a morality and ethics point of view for libertarians. The other being, let's look at what sort of an impact this is actually having. So if you look at the cases, I think close to 90% of the arrests in India are actually done on marijuana. Like if you look at all the drugs, most of the arrests are actually because of marijuana and ganja, basically. And who are the people who are actually being arrested over it? If you look at it, these are actually very poor people. So it's very rarely that rich people actually go to jail or even the cases are booked. It could be so that the rich people are obviously bribing them, or generally maybe the cops don't feel confident stopping some random car if that guy is rich and harassing him over ganja. But because they also sometimes the police have targets to make arrests, so they'll go to these pawn shop guys or rickshaw guys or workers. In fact, there was a study which showed the occupations of most of these people, and they're all like some electrician, plumber, rickshaw wala, this, that, auto drivers, and these people. And most of the cases are not even for peddling. I mean, they're not smuggling like kilos and kilos of the drugs, and most of them are actually but very small, like and barely slightly more than consumption levels. So what we are seeing is, the police are actually, causing a lot of problem for these people. I mean, obviously these are people who cannot afford even missing like a single day of their livelihood, like, because they have to go to the court, they have to go to the station. So we are basically victimizing the poor one. And the second thing is, like, what big harm is actually happening here to other people that we actually have to lock them up. Yes, okay, let us take the issue that, okay, they are harming their health, but we alcohol is already legal in the country, and the sort of damage alcohol has. In fact, there is no safe level of consumption of alcohol. People think like I have 2 drinks a week or 3 drinks a week, that is fine. But every scientific research says that there is absolutely no safe level for it. And libertarianism is basically about that, where you're actually making choices all the time. I mean, if you don't really exercise regularly, you're basically harming your body. If you're eating a lot of sugary foods, you're harming your body. So a lot of activities that we do, even a very sedentary lifestyle, is harming you at some point. Too much meat or bacon or processed foods are not good for you. So, but we all do that sort of a thing. Maybe we just prefer, maybe I like the taste of bacon more than I value my health. So we're all making those decisions at any point of time, including alcohol, including cigarettes. So why are we suddenly demonizing marijuana? And if you look at it, how many people would actually be crashing their cars after like DUI? In with the usage of marijuana is actually going to be like very little compared to the sort of effect that alcohol has. But anyway, let's not judge one substance as worse or this thing. Let's look at the policy impact. One, the poor people are basically going and into jail because they are actually the victims of this policy, and the sort of interference that the police do. We have also seen how they were actually even framing, right? So we've seen that Shah Rukh Khan's son, right? He was actually framed or whatever. He was arrested. He was actually kept in jail for a while. But in the end, they found that there was no case against him. If there was even a case, they would have definitely let him be in jail, and they would have filed a case. Absolutely nothing. They found that that police guy was actually trying to do some extortion. So, and we are actually seeing a lot of these cases with the police. Basically, it's an easy thing, and sometimes the police can even plant drugs also on people. So we know that in India how the cases are booked. So the overall harm that we are having to society because of the sort of police action is very high, and we don't want that sort of intervention in people's life, especially when it is a victimless crime. And now the other argument is, what if some people are actually becoming addicted? Maybe they're using much more harder drugs, and they are ruining their lives, their family is affected, and all that. How do we deal with that? So one, if you're looking at an externality as to like them being, totally under the influence and doing something, but there's the same with alcohol also. And, so this is not like a special category. As far as it comes to health, I think we should treat it like a health problem. There is nothing wrong. Addiction is basically a health problem. And in a lot of countries, slightly more liberal countries, what they've done is they've decided this is not a crime issue. This is a public health issue. If a lot of people are basically, just using a lot of drugs and damaging their health, it's obviously going to affect society. So let's treat it like a public health issue. So in many countries, what they've done, even to people who are like heroin addicts or something, like that is like a very extreme thing, right? So they started giving this other chemical that they can use, which is like less harmful. So basically, they're trying to do harm reduction and slowly try to wean these guys off. The health system is actually very supportive of them. So I think awareness campaigns can work, and family, society, everybody should get together and help people who are actually addicted. I think we have, as a society, we have always been a very, I would say Indian civilization has always been very tight, tightly coupled with the community. And so we have neglected that role, and we are, I think, also going a little bit away from our roots, where we have given away the responsibility, our social and moral responsibility to the people around us, to the state. We've delegated that to the state. And the state doesn't really care about people. Like we think that, state really cares about people, but if it really cared about people, the sort of laws that they would pass are much different. Why would you lock up a rickshaw guy in jail because he's smoking a joint, right? So benefit is that what benefit is it giving to society? So one, let us take that responsibility back with our friends or family. If we see somebody addicted, we should work a little bit harder rather than saying government just lock this guy up or do something or arrest the guy who's selling it. Like, what is our responsibility? And as libertarians, we are all about taking individual responsibility for people around
Yes.
us. And I think this is a sort of social awareness also that we are trying to create, because today as libertarians, we are not just doing a political party. We also intend for this to be a social movement where we gain
Yes.
back control over our lives, over our religious institutions, over our community, over our families, and be a little bit more actively engaged in society. So that is our perspective. We are not saying, a lot of people have been actually saying, ganjedi, and posting all these sort of comments, stop smoking joints. See, I mean, not that it's relevant, but I've never even smoked a cigarette in my life. But it doesn't matter. I defend the right of people to do so, because it's coming from multiple points of view. One, the property rights. Two, the fact that these policies are actually having a very harmful effect on society, criminalizing poor people. So Portugal actually decriminalized all sorts of drugs. They said, let's treat it like a public health issue, and it's not like their society has actually collapsed. Until 85, we were doing fine. So and some people were like, this is file FIRs on this guy. The people have been going really crazy. I think a lot of people don't know that there have already been proposals made in the parliament. There was Dr. Dharamveer Singh. He actually introduced a law where he wanted to decriminalize, and not just marijuana, mind you. He also wanted to decriminalize consumption of opium. So this actually went, but it was a private member's bill. So obviously, as you know, that really doesn't gain much steam. And a few years ago, I think maybe 5, 6 years ago, we had a hemp promotion summit organized in Hyderabad with by a couple of my friends, and then I also met the MP from Orissa. He was a three-time BJD MP, Tathagata Satpathy, who is also a strong proponent of legalizing marijuana. So these are not, I mean, just some random ideas that we've just pulled and said, this is it. There is a basis for it. The reason we support it is like, one, it was recently criminalized, like just like basic 30 or okay 40 years ago, less than 40 years ago, it was actually criminalized by the Indian government due to Western pressures, and it's been having a really bad impact on our people. Two, also the hemp is a very hemp doesn't have the THC in it, but for a long period of time, because of the whole regulation around marijuana, and people were worried that there might be some THC content in the plant that exceeds it. Hemp, which is actually a very valuable fiber, has been actually neglected. It is more environmentally friendly. So now a lot of states have actually started doing hemp policies.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you shift a bit to the left?
Okay, is that
Yeah, yeah,
okay? So a lot of states are actually looking at hemp policies. Himachal Pradesh was actually very interested. Many states have now created some guidelines which make it easy for them to grow hemp without getting into a regulatory problem. So yeah, there is a lot of discussion happening around this. In fact, even recently, the government did consider that based on the recommendations sent again by other government ministries. Again, this is not by some opposition or some liberal think tanks or people like us who are recommending it. It is actually by the government. I think it was the Ministry of Social Welfare that gave these recommendations that we should decriminalize this because of the sort of adverse impact it is having. And of course, the government in the end rejected those recommendations. But these are not some crazy guidelines coming by those cartoon libertarians, as you are actually making us look like. These are proper policy positions which are backed by evidence. There's studies, there's data behind it, and we are also showing both the moral and the other aspects of continuing to criminalize drugs. So yeah, that is about it. This is a very sensible policy. I hope people stop the fear mongering suddenly that we are gonna become some sort of a crazy junkie thing everywhere around it. I mean, you just think about it yourself. If suddenly tomorrow the government decriminalized drugs, would you start using them just because the government did it? Maybe some people will, maybe some people won't. But overall, I don't
yeah.
think that everybody wants to become like a drug
Yeah,
addict.
let's cover some of the ways that how it has been addressed as a public health issue.
Yeah, so in a lot of countries, like especially they usually look at like more of the harder drugs, because marijuana usually they don't see it much of a problem because many people do it and the harms are there. I mean, it's not a harmless substance for sure. There are definitely some evidence to show that if you do it at a very young age, it can affect your learning abilities, your cognitive abilities, and things like that. But it is not like a very dangerous drug. So people, the government just keeps telling people, offering free counseling, The government sometimes runs, de-addiction camps where families can enroll them. And the thing is, because the government has not criminalized it, more people feel free to actually come out. Like today, if there's a drug addict, he might actually be worried of getting found out because of the legal implications also that he might be caught. And everything is under wraps. But once it actually becomes a public health issue, I mean, nobody tries to hide the fact that they're addicted to alcohol or something. I mean, either they don't in front of the law, at least it's not a problem, so they would be more open to actually seeking help. And yeah, most of the countries, like nothing really drastic has happened. The Most of the government policies are targeted towards helping people who are addicted to like really serious drugs. For example, they're like heroin or opiate addictions. That is where they actually provide some sort of a medical help. There are some additional you know ca- other sort of a drugs that they offer people in order to wean them off the opioids, and it's sort of like a temporary. So basically, all governments have this policy called harm reduction. So basically, they're saying, you can't ban it. It obviously won't work if somebody is using something very dangerous. Let's try to get them to use something less dangerous. And also, in a lot of countries, there's a lot of overdoses. Overdoses are again because this is a lot of trade actually happens in the black market. So people don't really know how strong a dose is, whether it's been spiked. So they found out that once the decriminalization happened, the number of overdoses actually have actually gone down. People even have started doing helplines, and they've even started informing people if there's a bad batch or somebody got overdosed. They started these sort of networks to help people, but again, these are for very hard drugs, like for example, people who are addicted to things like heroin and all. And the fact is, today 85 or 88% of all arrests in India are due to marijuana. The hard drug thing is actually a very small problem. I mean, the problem exists definitely, but a lot of that can actually be dealt by community, the government educating people. In fact, like somebody asked me, do education campaigns really work? I think a very good proof of that is today in America, there is absolutely no restriction on alcohol once you're of the legal age, right? 21 is the drinking age, I think, in US in most states. And The alcohol consumption today in America has actually dropped. If you look at it with the last two generations and the current generation, a lot of alcohol companies today are worried that actually nobody is drinking alcohol. So, they are figuring out, they're trying to think like, what should we do to get people to drink more? The newer generation is just not drinking because they realize it's harmful, and, people know it. And same things happen with smoking. With the exception of like a few developing countries, smoking rates have actually fallen. And I think today, even in India also, I think they were just stagnated or are showing some amount of reversal. So over time, as people understand that things are harmful, it declines. I mean, at one point of time, there was smoking was allowed in flights; it was allowed everywhere,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it was actually these cigarette companies were even promoting them as saying it's good for health, there's no harm. But once the evidence came out, automatically it. And the other also thing for especially things like marijuana is for a lot of people with chronic diseases and condition, a lot of people use that basically
yeah.
as a
Medical
painkiller.
marijuana.
Yeah, for medical reasons. So right now you need a prescription and all, but you are sort of creating a lot of red tape. And if somebody is really suffering, I know people who have like cancer patients who use it, and they say this quality of life feels better with this. So we should. I think it's also sort of cruel to deny those people that and subject to a regulatory red tape. So from all aspects, I don't think there are going to be like very severe harms of this, and we should just consider. I think it's a very humane policy. It's not about partying and getting people high or things like that. I think it's a very humane policy. It's backed by solid evidence. So I don't see any reason why you should oppose it. But if anybody still has concerns, please post them and we can address them. I mean, there will always be fringe cases. There'll always be, but we can't make policies based on some few fringe people might do. We have to look at the impact on overall society. Right now, it is a very strong negative, and we wish to ameliorate that.
Yeah. So someone has this question that drug decriminalization, decriminalization. Would you like to see decriminalization of heroin or fentanyl too? I think that's a good idea.
Heroin and
Fentanyl.
so one, I think people usually, if they have access to safer drugs, then they would absolutely not use it. And I also see there will be few people who do it. So, but I think one uh, decriminalize it anyway, because if somebody is addicted to drug, you want to heal him, right? You want to make him better, right? You don't want to throw him in jail. So it's like saying, if you use drugs which will ruin your life, we will arrest you, throw you in jail, and ruin your life. So what exactly is happening there, right? So just decriminalize everything and let's look at it as a public health issue. If we find people around us, or even if the government comes across people using it, like, okay, tell them, educate them, just give them counseling or something, and that's absolutely fine. I don't see that as being a really huge issue.
Yeah, so another question is your thoughts on studies showing lowering drinking age leads to an increase in vehicular accidents.
Yeah, so no, I think lowering drinking age will probably, it could lead to it. Right now in India, depending on the state, the drinking ages vary. In some places 25, in some places it is 21. I am not sure that the drinking I mean, and most people anyway drink regardless. I'm pretty sure most of the people who are listening to would have had or tried alcohol long before they were legally allowed to. I don't really think there's going to be a really big problem in that. Obviously, you don't want very young people to have it. I'm saying if you're considered an adult, you have the right to do it. So in India, it is the 18 is the age. So I'm saying, okay, if you're 18 years old and you have the right to vote, you have right to maybe join the military, whatever, and then you have the right to form contracts. Then you have the right to drink alcohol as well. You can always tell people to be a little bit more responsible, and I think it will happen. So I'm not.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense that one of the most addictive drugs, that is alcohol, that
Alcohol,
is
absolutely.
very little talked, and
Yeah.
nicotine cigarettes very little
Yes.
talked. But
Yeah.
somehow marijuana becomes something taboo, and that needs to be trampled down with
No,
harder
because
enforcement.
because this is the whole thing was started by sort of America, right? They created
Yeah.
this whole anti-marijuana paranoia and all. It was not there. I mean, if it was there, why? And India is a very populist country, right? And the sort of government that we had from after independence was very sort of a nanny state thing, right? So anything that they thought it was bad, they would ban it. So why didn't they actually do it on their own? The fact that the Indian society, there was nobody was actually getting that paranoid or thought it was such a harmful thing that whole society was disintegrating. Nobody really cared about that issue. Otherwise, it would have gone. You think Nehru or people like Indira Gandhi would have let something like that happen? Absolutely not. The reason they did is there was no demand from the society. Nobody was actually seeing that. Today, people have been brainwashed by all this. And now we have to say brainwashed by Western propaganda about literally that is it. It's their whole campaign, right? So people have like sort of now accepted these ideas as the norm, and once government makes something illegal, immediately our people will be like, oh, that's illegal, it's bad, this, that, and they start justifying it. In fact, most of the anti-drug paranoia, especially on marijuana, is actually coming from people who've been watching too many things, propaganda from the Western countries or the American past propaganda. They started the war on drugs. They even said reefer madness to basically demonize the Mexicans. There were a lot of racist elements to the whole drug war as well. So no, absolutely no. It's We didn't really have that problem, and we are sort of, it is just scaremongering right now. Yes, some harder drugs definitely are a problem. I mean, I'm not saying that heroin is not really a problem, but considering that it is there, like for example, drugs are banned everywhere, and in Punjab, that there is a problem. So how would you want to deal with the epidemic in Punjab? And it was a MP from Punjab himself who actually proposed that we decriminalize even opium. He didn't stop with marijuana. He said decriminalize
Yeah.
it, because he realizes that this is the harm that's happening in our society, and the only way we can do it is treat it like a health problem. And the person who did it, that MP, is a doctor. She's a doctor, an MP from Punjab, Dharamveer Singh, and he proposed the bill in the parliament. So these are thought out things. These are coming from a and people said, a lot of people have been saying, you go and say that out anywhere on the street, and you'll get thrown out. People will not take you seriously. They laugh at you, this is bad, evil, etc. And they are right, because this is the sort of propaganda people have been brainwashed with, right, about drugs, about how it will the sort of fear mongering that's gone on in society, and which is the same thing. A lot of people, if you tell them that you want to privatize the service that the government is providing, a lot of people react that way. Even if you tell them that school should be entirely private, people will react very viscerally, because they've been brainwashed into thinking that this is the way and there can be no alternative. Sure, a lot of people who are saying the same thing about the drugs are also They're not coming at it from a very scientific point of view, or an evidence or a policy backed perspective. They're just like projecting somebody else's fears onto this issue, and reacting very viscerally. I recommend everybody to just like keep the whole emotional part of it and calmly look at it and deal with it as a health problem. We do want to help people around us who are addicted to drugs from a social point of view. Even the government, there's nothing wrong if they're doing educational campaigns. NGOs can contribute. I mean, I think even definitely as libertarians, we should, if we are seeing a problem of addiction, then definitely we should go and try to help people who are addicted as a social movement as well. So,
Yeah. So, anyone has any questions regarding this, or we move to the next topic? I think let's move to the article. So,
okay.
wait, let me share the link. Lord, there seems to be like this. Uh, this policy particularly falls in the statist mindset that people share, that anything happens, the government ought to solve it. But the most successful de-addiction centers have been mostly run by private entities.
Absolutely. Almost every successful thing is run by the private sector, with very few exceptions where the government has done a better job. But it's usually because they're incentivized. No, when somebody starts a de-addiction center, a private, either one, they're doing it as a business model where they want happy clients, or two, they're doing it out of a sense of a duty, if it's a religious organization or somebody, because they really care about the society around them. A government bureaucrat really doesn't care. He's just a posting there. He's not judged based on his results. Nobody even measures results. So where is the incentive for them? It's misaligned incentives. He is anyway, no matter what he does, even if people die in his de-addiction center, what's going to happen? He's just going to get transferred. That's the worst thing that can actually happen to a bureaucrat, is transfer. You're just pushing that guy somewhere else. So
Yeah. So yeah, is the article visible?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's first address the Goa taxi mafia one.
Okay, that was actually pretty crazy. So I came across this. I'm somebody who actually really loves Goa because it has like a fantastic food scene. So there was a point of time where I would go to Goa very often. But the problem started with the fact that for me, transportation was a huge problem. Like, I normally also do not prefer driving. I like just taking an Uber. And especially when you're in a city like Goa, you just want to go chill down, maybe have a beer or two. And then absolutely, I strongly believe that even if you have like a single beer, no chance of, you driving. So then it becomes a huge problem trying to find taxis. So the experience actually started becoming so bad in terms of, you always had to worry, would you get a taxi, and, the whole hassle with it. That I decided it was probably Thailand was actually becoming a much easier option, because I had a direct flight, visa on arrival, and, obviously the food's much better. And then you had Grab, which is the equivalent of Uber. So after a while, I just decided, Goa's too much hassle. It's just like a couple hours extra. So I would just like switch my, breaks, my food trips to Thailand. And this person actually, and there has been a huge controversy over it. And it's not like that the government doesn't know. People have been slamming the Goa government for a very long time, saying this transportation mafia is a huge problem. They extort, they threaten people, and they beat up anybody who even comes to pick you up at the airport if they're not like locally registered. Or sometimes even customers who rented cars, they face problems with these guys. So these guys are really violent, and the behavior is very similar to, I mean, obviously, if it quacks like a duck, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck. So this is typical, a very cartel and a mafia sort of a behavior. And the article that the Scroll wrote was, they were defending this, saying that this is a cooperative, and they said it's a cooperative, and they don't want to sell their business that they have built over the years to a very large company. And then they brought in the usual thing that these lefty magazines bring. They brought in the Bahujan. They just
Yeah.
said Bahujans. There are Bahujans in the drivers, and this consider this sort of a social justice. And then obviously none of that actually made sense. because one, you are just romanticizing these people by saying cooperative. These are not cooperative. You are actually, they are basically a cartel, and that they exert their control and they thrive on basically fear. And so saying that this is a business that they have created and sustained over the years is absolutely wrong, because that means you're saying that the entire transportation market is owned by these the drivers, the Goa taxi drivers. But no, see, in any market there are two sides of it. One is the consumer and one is the producer. And obviously they don't own it. Like, I can't just form a bunch of cabs and say now I have the right to be the only guys to do it. So you have to also look at the other side, who are the consumers, and both of them, the intersection of these people's requirements and their prices basically creates the market. And he was just basically using all sorts of euphemism by saying,
Yeah,
if at
their ability to romanticize the entire thing, that this is
uh,
something great going on, this is
yeah,
David versus Goliath,
yeah,
something like that.
and then they were like, usually these guys don't really get a very good price, and they're saying because once they get a trip, they will not get a return trip, and therefore they're charging 50% more. And the funny thing about it is, like, if you are if you're actually booking a cab, and you usually, because when I used to go to Goa, there was a couple of cabs that I was in contact with. But if I switch my location and stay in a different area, the cab guy will say, I'm sorry, I can't come and pick you up from there because I'm not allowed to. So even within the city, somebody from a Candolim guy, he can't go to South Goa and pick up somebody. You can just drop off. So this sort of craziness is basically just hiking up the prices for the customer, and you will actually be lucky. And he actually gave some government pricing, which I basically debunked by linking to, like, there's so many, like, you just have to go and type Goa taxi mafia or ripped off or something. You will see hundreds and hundreds. You just go to Google and type it, and everybody, and all of them are saying, we like Goa, it's nice, it's beautiful, we like the food, we like the whole experience, but this is basically creating a really bad experience, and we don't even want to come back. So
Yeah,
there
and
was
the
this
the tourism, the drastic drop in tourism numbers is showing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some part of it was like post-COVID because of the foreigners drought, but even a lot of people, like, you talk to people and they'll say, going to Goa is hassle. Like, I personally, I mean, anecdotal, but me and a lot of people like me, we feel that it's a lot of hassle because of the transportation issue. And yeah, so, and also if you look at the sort of draft guidelines that the Goa government has done, they have actually, they're not even actually, the draft guidelines are not even our version of a very free market thing or something. All they're saying is an aggregator, whatever the government rate right now is, the aggregator has to make sure that per kilometer that money has to go to the driver. Now, if Uber wants to charge anything, any commission, it has to charge on top of it. So if the government rate says 30 rupees a kilometer, the driver has to get 30 rupees a kilometer. No deductions are allowed. And on top of that, they have to get health insurance. They need to get some, for women and all, they need some protection. And, this is only, and these only Goa permit holders can actually drive the taxis. So it's not like people from other cities can go and start doing business in Goa. Ideally, I would have said yes, definitely. It's an open market; everybody should go. But the government policy is actually very protective for the government farmers, and even those guys are actually not going. And if you look at the Goa prices also, they're super high. Actually, if you go sometimes, they just. I remember one time for about 10 kilometers, they charged me 2,500 rupees one way, and I'm like, you had no option, so I took it. But it's super expensive. And the other thing is
250,
the
250 rupees a kilometer.
250 rupees a kilometer, right? That's not even the government rate, but they said, like, take it or leave it, sort of a thing. And there was nobody else available, and you just had to do it. So it basically, they just look at you and they decide how much they can take from you, which is fine. Normally, I have no problem with the a taxi guy demanding whatever he wants, but the problem is the government is artificially constraining the supply. It's not allowing, like, maybe my regular taxi guy to come and pick me up. So the distortion is the problem, not that the fact that somebody might demand a ridiculous price, but usually somebody else will say, I'll do it for cheaper and undercut it. So you are creating a sort of you're protecting their monopoly. And the other thing these people mentioned is that the apps sort of use surge pricing and all, but surge pricing actually has a very valid function. So for example, if there is a rain, and you are incentivizing the drivers, for example, if it's like 40 rupees a kilometer, suddenly during a surge pricing it will be 100 rupees a kilometer, and then somebody might be incentivized, more people might actually come. So the reason why there is surge pricing has a reason that, if you increase the prices, maybe some people might
Yeah, but
start
we
logging onto the app. But now in the current model of this sort of a mafia extortion, there is no value. There is no value to the surge, right? Now, if that guy charges me 100, 200, it's not that there's going to be a change in the condition where there's going to be more supply coming on. So it's really crazy, and the whole bringing the whole Bahujan word was actually a very slimy move. And this is exactly the sort of thing that these people do. They always bring in some caste, or say underprivileged people are getting affected, and that is also false, because I have actually, in the article, I have linked to a study which was done where they showed that a lot of people, in fact, they did a study of Uber drivers, and they found a lot of people from underprivileged communities were actually doing there. Religious minorities were there, and they said in our traditional industries we actually face discrimination, but here on an aggregator, on an app thing, we don't face any discrimination, and we have the flexibility. And so these are the people who are using it. So tomorrow, if there's an Uber or an Ola or whatever, Rapido, whatever, the people who are actually going to start using the services are a lot of people from the underprivileged communities, and you are actually blocking those people from actually improving their lives. So it is actually every single thing that the author actually claimed in the scroll article was actually just the opposite. He was actually defending, and he said, like, these people will be forced to work for Uber. So no, they will not be forced to work for Uber. Right now,
yeah,
it is the other way around. Today, if you want to
yes,
work, the unions won't let you, but nobody forces you to sign up with Uber. You can run your own private taxi service, and deal with your contacts and offer them value and do it. Nobody is going to stop you. So he was actually
yes,
defending a cartel and a mafia, and blaming the aggregators. And obviously this social justice thing is also crazy. So I think trying to protect a very small group of people for some political benefit, or to make sure that they get more money, is very harmful, because the number of people who actually go to Goa is much higher. And it's not just the people who are going to Goa, it's the locals also. Even they get affected. Of course, the locals have a better way of bargaining with these people, but why do you want the hassle that every time you have to step out, you have to bargain with the people? You log into an app, it will show you a price, you like it, you accept it. The transaction is very simple. Nobody, one of the reasons why when Uber and Ola started, a lot of people switched from autos was people hated the fact that they had to actually bargain with the auto drivers. The whole process of bargaining itself felt very ridiculous. And with Uber or these apps, it's take it or leave it thing. You don't like the price, you find it too so expensive, you do it. So yeah, so yeah, and it also really affects tourism. There was this case where actually Americans, there was 100 of them who were stepping off a cruise liner, and they wanted to go visit the city, and they booked a bus. So these taxi guys went up and beat up the bus driver, and then these guys got freaked out. They canceled it. They walked back to the ship, and they canceled their sightseeing trip. So imagine 100 Americans going out into Goa. They would have gone to a lot of places, drank a lot of alcohol, contributed a lot of money to the economy, but because of these people, they absolutely ruined that. And a lot of people like that, a lot of tourists are very unhappy, saying they've complained, they've tagged the tourism minister. And I think that's also the reason why the tourist minister and the Goa government actually brought in this draft guidelines, is to change the fact, the tourism is getting affected. The government realizes it, and I'll give them credit for trying to change this problem. But I believe that they need to show a little bit more spine, and somehow undermine these taxi unions by whatever political ways that they have, because this is harmful for everybody else also. All the other industries, the restaurants, the other businesses that depend on tourists, they are suffering because these guys are creating a negative atmosphere. So yeah, we need to, these are the sort of monopolies that the government is creating, and we are opposed to
yeah,
state created
yeah, and
monopolies.
they
Yeah.
accuse of that you will lead to monopolies.
Exactly. So it's always the other way around. Here we have seen the government is protecting around 15,000 or 20,000 whoever taxi drivers, and putting lakhs of people, you're punishing lakhs of people to privilege these guys. And you know that because these guys will show up in front of your office and protest, but 10,000 tourists will not come in front of the Goan department and, protest, or the locals will not come and protest. So usually most political equations are based on this. And of course, also with respect to what we are doing as the Libertarian Party of India, it's a common thing that we say is people come and say, you need street power, you need street power, which is
Yeah,
true, that at some point of time we will need to have enough people who can go and protest in front of a government office. Maybe tomorrow, if we have like a couple of hundreds of people who are members of our party, we can incentivize them, and we can tell them, let's go and complain to the government. Let's show up a street protest. Maybe when we do that, more people will react. So I also think that what they're saying is valid. but we are also at an early stage, so we need to get greater traction before we go onto the street. Now, if we go with 10 people or 20 people, it won't make an
Yeah.
impact. We need more numbers, and we are getting there. And definitely, everybody who's been saying that on Twitter, we agree that it's a valid point. We understand and recognize it, and we are working to ramp up our numbers so that we have the critical mass to actually go tomorrow, whether it be Goa or tomorrow it's in Bangalore to protest against the ban on Rapido. We will definitely implement that as soon as we have a little bit more strength and supporters. So I request everybody to be a little bit more patient with us.
Yeah. Yeah, we are coming. Don't worry.
Yes.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the second one.
Okay, this is like this is actually very sad. This is obviously a very sad incident, the Air India crash, and the moment it happened, nobody was even waiting for the investigation. Right now, even now, the investigation was going on. A lot of people have a lot of different theories, and the everybody is just like immediately saying, let's these people have privatized it. They've cut corners. Profit matters to these companies, not safety. And they were making all sorts of wild accusations. So if we let's look at like what actually happened in the last 24 years, 25 years, and we've seen that there have been like four different crashes. Okay, so three of the crashes have actually happened under government controlled airlines. One was the Alliance Air flight that crashed in 2000. Then after that there was two Air India Express flights that crashed, one in 2010 and one in 2020. And after that, now the flight 171 which crashed. So basically four crashes, out of which three of them were run by the government. They were fully under government control, and they happened. But when that happened, none of these guys were immediately shouting that this is because of the government that these planes crashed, right? So suddenly one plane crashes in now after Air India shifts to a private control, and immediately it is like the cause is only because of privatization. It's like they are really not interested in the truth. This is basically just about pushing sort of ideology. It's just like very ideologically blinded. I mean, at least let us wait for the investigation to come out and figure out. See, air travel is super safe. We have like hundreds of millions of people who have flown, or maybe billions of passengers have flown in the last 20, 25 years. And out of that, we've had four crashes. See, I'm not saying that this number of crashes are acceptable. Any crash is one crash too many. But we also have to understand that these are complex machines, and there are so many different factors that can happen. Sometimes it's weather, sometimes it's human error, sometimes there are infrastructural issues. And if you sort of read through the article, you will see that they have actually been in some of these incidents. They were contributing factors from the government itself. So I'm not saying that maybe Air India has done nothing wrong. I'm saying let us wait for the investigation. We don't know. Maybe it could have been an issue with the Boeing, or maybe it could have been an issue with the maintenance, or sometimes sometimes errors happen, and errors happen for the first time. And there is no way to preemptively prevent every error. The way aviation industry works is whenever there's an accident happens, you have these investigations that they do a deep dive. They try to figure out what went wrong, and immediately they pass these circulars to everybody, and they update their guidelines saying do this has happened. The aviation industry actually takes it very seriously, because these planes cost tens of millions of dollars. They are going to take a hit of thousands or like hundreds of crores on the image. So no airline company will think, let me save 10,000 rupees and put like a airline which is valued at like a few hundreds of crores at risk. And people will say, oh, it is insured. But insurance doesn't mean it's free. There is a premium to the insurance. And now if they've had one accident, their premiums across are gonna go shoot up. And now even the insurance companies also have again offloaded some of the insurance to other companies. So it is a huge payout that these people have to do. No airline company in their right mind would want to, put itself at risk, and also the sort of reputation loss that it happens, right? So if you actually look at it, let's look at why people say these people are cutting corners, because of financial pressures or the need to make profit. So but if you look at it compared to the private industries, who are the people who are actually pushing all these financial pressures on to the airlines? Okay, so the biggest contributor to these pressures on airlines is basically the government. So the aviation fuel, so the aviation fuel has an incredible amount of tax. So there's almost like a 30% VAT, and then because it's also excluded. I mean, it depends on the state to state. So it can go anywhere from 5% to 30%. On top of that, there is a central government tax, I think about 11%. And on top of that, this is not included in GST. So obviously, you don't get input credit. So overall, the cost of the fuel itself is 45% of an airplane's operating expense, which means your ticket, whatever you pay 10,000 rupees, 4,500 is just the fuel cost of it. And if the fuel cost of it, basically a big chunk of it goes to the government, that is a margin that actually could have been with the airline, but it is going to the government. And
Yeah,
our regulate.
people don't seem to realize that how much of the whatever they pay for the ticket, how much of it actually ends up in the hands of the government.
Absolutely. So the airline, considering the fact that they actually invest billions in buying airplanes and the sort of, that, they say, what is the quickest way for becoming a millionaire? It's like, you have to be a billionaire and you have to start an airline. So that is how it works. So this is a real thing. And if you look at it worldwide, most of the airlines are actually not doing very well. The numbers always seem very borderline. Most of them are in losses for many years. Sometimes they'll have a good year. So it is an industry that is under severe financial pressure. Now, eventually, at some point of time, there is a problem that these pressures affect their decision on how they manage their planes or something. And you can't say it, right? If the airline itself is not sustainable, how will they be able to run it? So the government is imposing these pressures on these airlines. How about you just release those pressures and give them, more money to, make sure they can add additional safety measures. So now let us look at the Allianz air crash that happened in 2000. So it was basically caused by pilot error. There's no doubt about it. So if you look at it, sorry, Tushar, just scroll.
Yeah,
No, where you were before. Sorry,
yeah, this one,
no, further down.
the down.
Yeah, yeah. No, just yeah, slightly up. That's the one. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So basically, what they did is the Patna government, they had actually a lot of obstructions around the runway. So now the government in Bihar was refusing to cut the trees. So after the accident happened, they investigated it, and then they recommended, saying that there are so many obstructions around. There's the trees that you need to cut, and the Bihar government flat out said we won't cut the trees. And because of that, the runway length actually got truncated. Like, they had a very big runway, but you could not use a section of that runway because you have that slope, your angle and all. You have a very tall tree. You have to avoid that and come down. So the effective runway was actually small, and private airlines were complaining, saying that there's a limit now on the amount of load that we can take. We can't take full load. So the airlines were suffering for 12 years. Okay, so for 12 years after the accident, the Bihar government refused to cut a tree. Okay, so it is not, and they didn't ask the Bihar government to, build something, add more equipment, just cut a bloody tree. And they flat out said, we won't cut the tree. And when the government said, we have to cancel the permission of the airlines, even then they said, you want to cancel, you cancel it, but we are not going to do it. Finally, I think in 2012, then they decided, they cut a few trees, again stopped, did drama, again they did it. That whole drama has been going on. And even till date, and that airport didn't even have a license. Now imagine you run a business without a license. Immediately the government will come and act like you're murdering people. So this is like, imagine the sort of safety risk that you have and the same claims that the government makes, right? If you are without a license, you're putting everybody at risk. The Patna airport didn't even have license for many years because they were not ready to cut the trees. So, and even till date, the tree obstructions still remain because the trees keep growing back, and every other time these people make an issue, they don't prune the trees. So that is the problem. So now you're looking at apathy from the government, right? And the other crash that happened was in Mangalore. The Bangalore 2010 crash. It killed like about 158 people, and the government said that runway is basically very small and it needs to be extended by another 1,000 meters to make it safer for airplane operations. And it has been 14 years since that accident has happened. Till date, the Mangalore thing has, they've not actually fixed it. And when they actually asked it, the state government, I mean, this was under government control only for a very long time, till 2019 or something. They said there is no benefit. The state government said there is no revenue benefit if we extend the. I mean, if you read about the statement, like, it's crazy, right? A government person saying, yes, we know that the runway is unsafe, but what revenue benefit are we getting? I mean, that is what all the people claim to us, right? That saying that, the government has no profit interest. They only want to serve the people. That's why you trust it. Private guys are bad. They're evil. They're always looking for profit. So why the hell is a government officer saying there is no revenue benefit from the extending the airport? And then the Airports Authority of India said, we don't have funds. Okay, the Airport Authority of India said, we don't have funds to spend on extending this runway. And so understand that an accident happened, 158 people died, and still they're saying the same thing. And then after that, it got privatized. After privatization, the privatized, I think, I don't remember who got it, maybe Adani got it or whoever got it. And they're saying we have to follow these recommendations. So give us land. We want 30 acres of land. And now the Karnataka government is saying we will not provide the land. If you want the land, you buy it from us. Again, a government agency here, when it was under government control for about 9 years or 10 years, they didn't do it. After it became private, they're saying, you private operator, you compensate us, you pay us for the money. And obviously, as a private company, and these people are charging a lot of money. So right now they're trying to figure out, AI is begging these guys. These guys are not giving. So today also, it is a very dangerous airport. And they're now, I think they're trying to do it. I don't have a recent update, but this is exactly the same thing. So the reason why the government is not doing it is they're saying we don't have money, and they're saying, we would rather put the money somewhere else. And the worst part about it is the Airports Authority of India has been building ghost airports, because they started something called the regional connectivity scheme. They got it into their mind that every place in India should be connected. It doesn't matter whether people will fly from there or not. Some random town in some random state where there is no traffic, they'll build an airport. And now what has become is they've become ghost airports. There are airports where there's not even a single flight for about 4 5 months, 6 months. And the Airport Authority of India has spent hundreds of crores of rupees on building these airports. But an airport today, which is still at risk, another crash can happen. Absolutely zero, excuse my language, zero fucks given. And, that is the state. And the other one is the Kozhikode crash. Again in 2020, this actually happened under really bad weather, and there was definitely a little bit of a pilot issue also involved in that accident. But the DGCA has actually designated that as a critical airfield, and there was this captain Mohan Ranganathan, and he actually had warned, in 2011 itself, that because of the it's sort of like a hilltop on the it's like a flat thing, and there's no buffer zone. It says it's very dangerous, and they said doesn't have any safety systems. And then nothing happened. And after the crash, still now, they haven't really, they made some improvements. But considering that 9 years before that, it was warned that an accident like this will happen, government did nothing. He said it is not an accident, it's a murder. That are his statements. So you have the government that has all the safety guidelines that are being presented to it, saying this is dangerous, people will die, people will die, people will die. They don't care. But one airplane crashes, we don't even know what the reason, whether it's Air India's fault, pilot fault, Boeing fault, whatever, we don't know. And could be anybody's fault. But without that, immediate thing is privatization. Privatization is wrong. Profits, private companies. So this sort of a socialist mindset that has been cultivated, where private enterprise is seen as bad because of the indoctrination of Nehru and his Fabian socialism. And the whole psyche of Indians have been altered by this. And that is something we are fighting it, and we are also facing a really tough job, because people are so indoctrinated by this that they automatically consider anything private as evil. These guys want profit.
Yeah.
Profit is a dirty word, right? But look at Indigo, right? For example, Indigo, I think, commands 50 or 60% of the market share today. They are the lion's share, and they have not a single accident till date. That doesn't mean that they will not have another accident tomorrow, but they have the majority of the traffic till date. And they like tens and thousands of flights, maybe hundreds of millions of people carried, not a single accident. And why, right? Because they're doing something right. And SpiceJet also had some minor safety mishaps. And when that happened, when the news of that happened, that there were some missed landings and some minor safety reports came out, immediately people started, like 44% of their customer base dropped, and they were forced to respond to it. And this is the thing about business, right? You do things wrong, and customers lose their trust. And if they lose their trust, you don't have the business, and without a business, you go bankrupt. Now look at the airports, for example. The airports are run by the government today, few of them, and they don't have any incentive. And also the government also prevents competition. For example, you can't have another second airport in most of the cities, because one airport will get that monopoly clause. So they're insulated from competition, and when the government is running, they don't care. Warnings have been given, they've neglected it. Even today, people are fighting for, there was one guy who was fighting with the court. I think it was in the Surat airport, saying there are a lot of obstructions and they're violation of the height things, and they don't have enough safety features. But again, the government doesn't care. So aviation wise, if you look at it, the airlines are actually very safe. Accidents have happened and will continue to happen, but we need to. And the thing is, when accidents happen, you should not. And if it is found that Air India has actually committed a fault, you should not let them off lightly. The other problem in India is when accidents happen, and these companies they get away with it also. So you have to make sure that when somebody has been neglecting something, they've done something recklessly, they need to be punished. So you need to have that corrective measures taken. Otherwise, like why, okay, so assuming private companies also, yes, they have an aim to maximize profit. They're worried about reputation. But if there is no significant harm when they do a mistake, then obviously they will take it a little bit more easier, right? So whether it's the government or private, it's the incentive structure that matters, and we have to tailor that for the best outcomes. And if Air India is found guilty of recklessness, they should be penalized heavily, so that it also sends a warning to other people that the cost benefit analysis when they do, if the fines are like really damaging, they would say, what, let me spend a little bit more money and do it. But all of that can only happen when these airlines are profitable, not if the government's being profitable and the airlines are pushed to losses. So why are you charging so much money on the aviation fuel? Why are you doing all these regional connectivity schemes? Just get rid of all the damn taxes. So the cost of tickets will come down. The demand will go up. Indian air traffic has a lot of scope for expansion. We have still very little compared to other countries. And a large part of that is because the government is unnecessarily making it more expensive. The government needs to allow more airports. So let's look at let's look at a very evidence-based policies. Let's not demonize privatization. And we had two Air India accidents under government. We had one Alliance, again government control. So one accident under the private sector is not it's not attributable to privatization. Also, wait for the report. There are families of people who died there. Immediately, it is sort of a misservice to them if you're just blaming privatization. They also deserve to know why this happened, and all of us as society, we have to demand accountability from everybody involved. So by creating this really silly narratives is not helping anybody. So everybody should be a little bit more level-headed about this.
Yeah, definitely. If you look closely, most of the time, the fault comes out to be some negligence of some bureaucrat who doesn't have skin in the game.
Usually, yes. But the thing is, like, I'll be honest, there are a lot of times when private companies also have, like, done things. See, even Boeing's done a lot of nonsense, but again, Boeing's also like, see, what happens is, see, normally Boeing also is backed by the US government, which sort of, and so somebody made a really interesting point today about, how, why did Air India pick Boeing and not Airbus? That was largely because of Praful Patel, the politician. He was the aviation minister. So he actually, there was some sort of a deal that, and he forced Air India to choose Boeing over Airbus. And there was some sort of politics, some sort of backroom deals that were accused of. So, again, and now Tata is dealing with the legacy of a lot of either staff practices and a lot of decisions that were made during the government policy. So the path for them ahead is also not going to be so straightforward. There are a lot of factors, but that being said, I want to be very clear that I am not saying that private companies are never to be blamed. They are. Many times private companies make mistakes, and when they do, we are saying fully punish them severely. In India, when people die, they'll give them compensation of some 50,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees, nonsense. And even today, why is Air India actually compensating them with close to $200,000 is what they're legally obliged to. That is because of an international convention. That is not because of Indian government's rules. If you look at the sort of compensation that is given in India to deaths, it's very different. Our tort law also doesn't give too much multiplier on the punitive damages. So we have a little bit of a reform there also that could be done. And, we should look at the deterrent effect. We should also look at fines to create a deterrence, not just compensation. So there are policies that can change, and in private companies, yes, a lot of private companies do bad things. They have to be punished. The problem with the government is, even if you punish the government, it's not their money, right? So the bureaucrat who's sitting in the government office, he doesn't care. He'll just transfer it to another thing, and it's basically again taxpayers only. We only have to pay again for the fines that other people are getting. So nobody really cares. Politicians don't care. Private company, they'll go bankrupt with these fines. And the shareholders, the directors, they're going to tighten the screws on everybody. They'll be brutal. See, capitalism is ruthless. And out of this ruthless efficiency comes, trying to provide value. And safety is also actually factored into the market thing, because you screw up, you lose billions, you lose reputation, your business will be wiped out. There cannot be a greater incentive for anybody in the private sector more than that. The risk of losing your business, that, all your money, all your wealth will be gone. So, absolutely. Let's
That's
have
that's
more.
basically having skin in the game.
Absolutely, absolutely. You need skin in the game, and you need incentives, rightly aligned incentives. So, yeah, let's wait. Hopefully, we'll have the results of the investigation out soon, and hopefully, the practices can do it. And I actually also want to bring up another slightly tangential topic. So, in fact, like I was just flying today from my hometown, and normally, that whenever you sit in a flight, they actually ask you to open the shades. They always make you open the shades before takeoff and landing. They make sure of that. So the reason why they do that is because most of the accidents usually happen, like I think 70 or 80% of accidents happen during takeoff or landing. So these are the most dangerous timings for an airplane, if and all a disaster is involved. So you want, if something is going wrong, you need people to be look out of the window and be situationally very aware, because the difference between life and death is barely a few seconds. So if you know that something is happening, you need to be react fast, like unbuckle your seat belts, go to the place, slide down, whatever is the measure that is recommended by the staff. So your situational awareness is very important. You see a fire in the engine, you'll immediately get alerted and be ready for action. And this is the standard practice. Pilots say it. And now today, the airline lady, I mean the air hostess told me, close your shades during takeoff. And same thing happened when I was landing also. They said, because in the same airport a couple of days ago. And I didn't really think about it. And today, and they asked me, and I said, like, why? What changed? Why are you asking me to do this? We're always supposed to open it, right? And she said, see, because we've had the war with Pakistan, and this is a defense airport. To prevent photography from people and all, we are just like shutting it down. So this is the government which has changed a safety rule. It is a safety rule that's always been there for situational awareness, and this is barely a week after an accident has happened. But these guidelines are currently in place, where your situational awareness will be low if something happens. Like for example, you are in an airplane that's about to crash, and you see something, you won't know, and you will lose the precious few seconds. The Indian government has passed a rule saying shut down the shades, because we don't want anybody to take photographs of the defense airport. And now, and you also think about it. Okay, fine, I understand like the implications for defense and all. If the air hostess is sitting in the front seat, somebody in the last row will just sneak up open the window a little bit and take a video of it. I mean, if you think that our safety is largely dependent on that simple security thing, we are already screwed. But the government has passed the rule, because bureaucrats think in a very different way, and now you're actually putting people's safety at risk. Maybe it is not at risk, but that was the government's argument. And pilots have also said this, that you need the window shades always open to have better situational awareness. So if have they overstated it before, and now they're saying it's okay, but look at it, look at the way the government is behaving. We always think that I mean, most people think that libertarians, we know we don't believe in that, but people think that anytime the government passes a rule or something, guidelines, it is for the people's benefit. But right now, you have actually seen a very bad example right after an accident, where now they're saying close the shades, and maybe God forbid something happens and people don't have that, lose that few seconds, and some people die. Who will be held responsible? So we have to always question policies. We also have to little bit stop blind trust in the government, or think that because the
Yeah, and
government's running something, it is safe. So we just have to be a little bit more vigilant, and we have to keep questioning them
yeah.
and demanding.
Recently, this small story about how they made a stupid clock in Bihar, and then now they
Oh,
are, yeah, and now they
oh
are
my God.
reconstructing it after all the public outrage.
you,
So that
you know
shows
what
that.
yeah, that was hilarious. And I also shared when that happened, I was mocking them, and now I'm feeling bad, like, why did we actually mock the government? Because now what they've done is they're spending more money on it. So it's like
Yeah.
we've shot on our own feet, because again, it's not the bureaucrat that's paying it, it's not the politician we pay. We made fun of it, but the joke is on us. So more taxes to build a revised version of the clock tower, and God knows how much more money they will do. So see, this is the sort of a state of society we are living in. And as libertarians, we are trying to fight this. We are trying to
Yes.
do whatever we can to create greater awareness, and getting more people to rally for the cause. Just look at things which are happening around you, and if you are as fed up of it as we are, and if you are not, you should be, and you should support us. even if you don't agree with all our positions, on a broader policy plank of, removing the government's intervention in your life. Because see, you might think that you want the government intervention in one part of your life in a certain area because you are seeing some social damage or something like that. But the problem with the government is you can't stop it there. From there, they'll go everywhere. They'll say change the horn to a musical instrument, some other rule. They'll do whatever they'll do. Basically, it's like most of the times their policies are like Muhammad bin Tughlaq only. And in fact, like the I commented on this, people were saying, "Don't you guys have any original ideas?" I mean, the laws of physics are the laws of physics. The laws of economics are the laws of economics. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And it's not that Indians are, very different from everybody else in the world. Most people respond to incentives. Most people, the economics, the behavior when it comes to economics is largely similar. And these libertarian policies are basically about giving freedom. Today, I'm saying, give people freedom, and you can't immediately say that, oh, that is a Western concept. We had a lot of freedom historically. We had the freedom of trade, and we were trading with everywhere around the world. The government had very little interference in people's lives for a very long time till we sort of had this massive surveillance states which emerged post the after the British era, or maybe some part of the Mughal, they started centralizing it. And I mean, it was an evolutionary process, but we had a lot of freedom. And the other thing also I want to point out is you are people are making fun of us saying, you have copied it. Like, if I say that, you have to be free because somebody in the US says the same thing, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's copied. And look at your Indian constitution, right? Look at your Indian laws, they're all copied. Today, what has, or for example, if the current political party, if you look at it, they've just copied or perpetuated the schemes of the last party. That party has done it before it. If Vajpayee has started something, UPA has continued it. If UPA has proposed something like Aadhaar and all, Modi has continued it. So, we are not saying, copying is wrong. We are saying, okay, the farm bills were proposed by UPA also, and Modi passed it, he had to back down, but nothing wrong with the farm bill. So, if the bill is good, it is good. It doesn't matter who implements it. Our constitution, so even the sections, okay, most of these British colonies, the section numbers are also the same. For example, we have section 420, we say 420 for fraud, right? The same section in Nigeria is just missed by one, 419. So the
Yes.
scams in Nigeria are called 419 scams. So courts, Supreme Courts in judgments refer to judgments of other Supreme Court. See, we borrow good ideas from everywhere. We implement policies from everywhere. And also, people are saying, you have any original ideas? Yes, we have a few original ideas also, but originality doesn't mean it is good, right? Muhammad bin
Yes.
Tughlaq had amazing original idea to move capital from Delhi to Daulatabad and got screwed. And then he had the idea that we'll replace copper, gold and silver coins with copper and brass, devaluing the currency, and whole thing got ruined. So let us look at ideas which work. Let us look at the empirical basis behind them, but let's not get hung up on labeling them as outside area. It came from here, it came from there. These sort of debates are largely a distraction. It serves nobody. Even people who are commenting, it's not furthering the policy debate. It's not furthering anything. It's just blanket write off. So yeah, hopefully, people will stop doing that and focus more on the implications of the policy and the reasoning behind them.
Yeah. I think we have covered everything.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone. Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Please do share whatever, and have proper discussions, and we'll respond to whatever questions you have in the comments. So thank you all for coming. Thank you
Yeah.
for joining.
Thank you. Thank you all. All right. Good night.